Don't let a DUI charge ruin your life. Get a professional and confidential evaluation from our experienced team at True Heights Treatment. Our evaluations are accepted by the majority of courts in the state of Illinois and provide a comprehensive assessment of your substance use patterns and potential treatment needs. Get the help you need today and start your path to a brighter future. Contact us now to schedule your evaluation at 708-248-7039 or at thtdui.com.
The George Brassey podcast is made possible with funding provided from Brassey Global Strategies, LLC, a leading political consulting, public policy, government affairs, and research firm. Are you interested in running for elected office? Need advice? Call or email George 708-769-5015. Brassey Global Strategies 1 at gmail.com.
Everyone, it's George. I'm so glad to welcome my colleague, Alderman of the 5th Ward in the city of DeKalb, Scott McAdams, to the podcast. Alderman McAdams, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm great. Alderman McAdams, can you tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and what led you to running for alderman in the city of DeKalb?
It's a funny story, yeah. I was a campaign operative, and I used to help campaigns serving as anywhere from an on-site canvasser to a campaign manager. And I was invited to work for the J.B. Pritzker campaign in 2018 as the executive director of the DeKalb County Blue Wave Project. And I was really excited to do that, and I really had a good time. I've never worked for a candidate who kept all his promises and did everything he said he was going to do in the campaign, which was a nice change of pace. And as the campaign wound down and after we had won, I got word from my supervisor's supervisor, who directly answered to J.B. Pritzker himself, that they wanted me to stay on and to help organize the municipal elections in 2019. And I agreed to do that. And I started working for the Democratic Party of DeKalb County at that point. And then we started recruiting candidates for alderman, and I couldn't find anyone to run in the 5th Ward where I lived. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to put my name on the ballot. I'm going to run an honorable campaign. I'm going to get some name recognition and some practice running, and it'll make me a better campaign operative because I'll know what it's like to be a candidate. So I signed up to run for alderman. No one ran against me. I had my opponent was an incumbent woman who was very popular and very established in the community. And I didn't think I had much of a shot of beating her, being an outsider, being unknown. And it's local politics, and they really need to know who you are. But I ran anyway, and I ran an honorable campaign and started knocking on doors and started doing the stuff that people normally do when they run for office. And I got a message in my inbox from one of my supporters that said, "Your opponent has dropped out of the race." And at that moment, I kind of gasped and was a little concerned because I wasn't intending to be the alderman. I was intending to run and to gain election experience. So I asked my now ex-opponent to sit down and have a cup of coffee with me. And we got together at a local coffee shop in the ward. And I said, "What happened?" And she said, "Well, first of all, I thought you were my friend." And I said, "I'm very sorry. I had no intention of challenging you or making your life difficult. I just think it's important that we run candidates." And I said, "We're still friends as far as I'm concerned." And she said, "Okay, that's fine." She said, "There's a lot of bullies who pick on the city council and the mayor and local officials, and I'm just tired of them. And my husband, he's ill, and I'd rather spend these last few years with my husband. It sounds like you can handle it. And so I decided that you could be the alderman." And so I won the election a couple of weeks later and made up my mind to give it my best effort. And so one of the first meetings I had with the economic development folks in town was that Facebook was looking to put a data center in DeKalb, and they wanted my help. And I said, "I will fall on my sword to do that because I understand that economic development would change DeKalb's ability to attract bigger business, our ability to cut taxes. There were a lot of benefits to bringing a data center to Illinois, especially in DeKalb. And so they said, find a way to distract these bullies. And so I started engaging with the bullies, and I found that I got to know them pretty well. I got to understand what made them tick, and I was able to keep them distracted while we passed the data center. And now we are looking at $6 to $12 million in local tax revenue to the taxing bodies for the next 20 years, all things considered, and if everything stays the same. And it was definitely worth it to do that. Although now I'm running for re-election, the bullies have reemerged and are making their best effort to try and make my re-election challenging. So, I consider myself the accidental alderman of DeKalb. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I went to school at Illinois State, not Northern Illinois University. And I only chose Northern Illinois University a few years ago because it's close to where my son lives and he enjoys collegiate sports, and NIU sports give us an opportunity to spend time bonding together. But here I am, and here we are, and we're looking at greater economic development in the future. So I'm sticking around to make sure that happens.
Alderman McAdams, is DeKalb have a large portion of Republicans?
So they used to. It used to be red, and in the last 10 to 15 years, it started getting purple and it's turned blue. Barack Obama in 2004 got more votes in DeKalb County for Illinois senator than George Bush got for his re-election campaign. So it is a pretty blue county, but it's been traditionally red, and the folks that are Democrats kind of feel bullied and oppressed, so they keep it quiet and they do things on hush hush. There's not a lot of open discussion about being a Democrat because I think they've been kind of pushed to be quiet about it.
Alderman McAdams, how do you end up with such a huge Facebook following?
So in 2017, when Donald Trump won his election, I had a medical issue and I was off work for a while. And the only thing I had to do all day was Facebook. And with Donald Trump taking position in the White House, I thought it might be better to use my Facebook for political reasons than personal reasons. So I began to investigate how the algorithm works, what people do to grow their audiences, and I slowly began chipping away, building the audience, so that I could share Trump memes essentially, and kind of have a little bit of fun with it. Everyone was very upset, as you can remember, back in 2017 when Donald Trump took over. Everybody who voted for Hillary Clinton was mortified, and I found that humor was the best way to kind of deal with the having to address a president we didn't like, with policies we didn't like, and activities and behaviors we certainly didn't like. And it was relentless, day in and day out. And so it was nice to have a way to give people some sort of control over it, some sort of feeling that they weren't feeling so powerless. And then once I became alderman, I sent friend requests to everybody in the ward that I know of, and started interacting with them more often, which made my name appear in other people's pages and gave them the idea to come over to me. And I have a bunch of groups on Facebook. And so if I find that we're Facebook friends and I see something in the timeline that fits one of my groups, I'll share it to my group and I'll invite you to the group. And so I've been building my groups the same way I built my personal following.
Alderman McAdams, what type of policies do you want to see happen on the city council in DeKalb?
So I want to just keep the momentum going. We have 7 people with very diverse ideologies and perspectives, but we all agree that economic growth is good for DeKalb. And so while we might argue over backyard chickens or the proliferation of gambling devices in the neighborhoods, we all agree that the more economic development we have, the better chance we have for lowering the tax burden on the taxpayers, which is what every single person on that board wants to do, because that's what we hear about most. Crime and taxes are my top 2 issues that I hear about.
Scott, how do you manage that as far as crime? Because, there's a lot of right-wing people who have very mistaken views about crime.
Sure.
Are always quick to share.
So
how do you respond to that?
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that because just recently I was speaking to a woman in town who indicated that she's been in town for almost 60 years and that she doesn't like the direction that the city's going in because it doesn't remind her of the old DeKalb. And then she said something very interesting. She said, all those Section 8s living over there on the west side. And then she said, do you know what I mean when I say Section 8s? And I said, well, yeah, Section 8 is a federal housing program, but you're using it as a dog whistle for Black people. And there's a lot of people in town who think that Black people equates with crime. They over exaggerate the crime that we have here, which is not what Chicago's dealing with. It's not what our friends to the east have to cope with. We don't have regular carjackings here. We don't have murders. We don't have rapes. We do have crime. Anytime you have 40,000 people in a small area and a university, you'll have a microcosm of all of society's positives and negatives, and that includes crime. But we're making efforts to renovate and rejuvenate the area that in the west side that really needs some help. The Annie Glidden North group, they've been working for 10 years before I got here to come up with plans to rejuvenate the neighborhood. And we'll be listening to RFPs in the next couple of weeks on ideas on things to do with a large piece of property that the city has acquired with the hopes of selling it in a way that rejuvenates the neighborhood.
Alderman McAdams, what role does Northern Illinois University play in the local economy?
So they produce about $60 million worth of goods and services, and it really does make a huge difference in whether DeKalb is a small town in Iowa or a moderate city in Illinois. And lately, we've been working together with the city. There was always a town versus gown dispute where you were either a townie or you were either for the university. We're changing that. We don't want that to happen. We want everyone to understand that NIU is part of the community and that we absolutely want to work with them. We have a great president of NIU, Lisa Freeman, who's been super cooperative and super helpful with our work. And she's worked with both the mayor before, Jerry Smith, and then the current mayor to really kind of bridge that gap and to make one DeKalb.
Alderman McAdams, were you a resident of DeKalb when the shooting occurred at Northern Illinois University?
I was not. I was sick home from work. I was living in Kirkland, Illinois, just north of here. And I had taken a long nap, and I had woken up, turned on my television, and they were talking about a shooting, and they were saying NIU, but it wasn't registering in my mind that it was DeKalb. And then I was shocked when I found out that it was DeKalb because I was only 20 minutes away, and that's not a normal thing out here. So it was very, very unpleasant and very shocking. And we're still 15 years later kind of dealing with the after effects of that. I think a lot of our anti-crime concerns stem from the trauma of that day in February of 2008.
How would you describe your relationship with the mayor of DeKalb?
Oh, we're getting along good. I was warned that I wouldn't like him, but I like him immensely. And even though we may not agree on everything, I think he's really done a good job of bringing the city together, of addressing the issues that have been neglected for a while, and of having a good approach to how he handles his job. And so I've been very pleased with everything that he's done, and I'm happy to support him.
What do you think some of the biggest challenges facing DeKalb will be in the future?
I think we're going to just want to continue the progress that we've made in modernizing. We're modernizing our downtown. We've renovated the main street so that it's a lot safer. And I think the biggest challenge at this point will be drawing people to DeKalb to see the wonderful amenities that we have to offer, and then continue to try and recruit people to move here. One of the things that I can absolutely accept is that we just don't have people moving to DeKalb the way you normally would. And so that's going to be something we're going to focus on going forward.
Make that pitch. Why should they move there?
Oh, it's a great town. So I used to live on the south side of Chicago, and DeKalb today reminds me of my childhood home. Neighborhoods, parks, churches, all these groups working together. Everybody knows each other. Everybody works together for the same common goals. Everything that was good about the place I grew up in is good about DeKalb. Everyone takes great pride in their city. Everyone wants to see us succeed. And it really is a great place. Even if I weren't the alderman, I would recommend moving here because it has something.
Alderman McAdams, our last question is always, what are 2 books that have been important to you as a person and why?
So the question was coming, and I literally spent days trying to think of trying to pare it down to 2 books. I'm going to say my first book that has an impact on me is any one of the books that are sitting on my to be read pile, which is continuous and perpetual. But honestly, when I was a kid, the book that probably had the greatest impact on me was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And it was his account of his life in Nazi Germany and the Holocaust. He spent years at Auschwitz, and he survived the war. And his viewpoint, he was a psychologist before the war, and his viewpoint was largely shaped by his experiences in psychology and then experiencing the Holocaust as a psychologist. He emerged from the Holocaust with a new idea on how people work and their behavior. And he introduced the idea of the will to have meaning in your life and to have something that you focus on, regardless of the circumstances around you, that gives you hope and meaning, and then trying to achieve that. Like after he left Auschwitz and after he was liberated, he went back into the world of psychology and brought about a new viewpoint on how to handle your problems. So when I was a kid, I was fascinated and mortified by the entire Holocaust, and I wanted to understand it. And I think that book brought me closer to the experience than any other book. There's a lot of books out there with experiences on my experience in the Holocaust. Lots of survivors wrote books, but his book gave me insight into life and into how to address things. So if the thing that I took away from it when I was younger is no matter your circumstances, you can find joy in the moment, and to look for joy in the moment, and to find something good to focus on when things are bad. And I find that his ideology or his philosophy on psychology it's largely my ideas, because that's how I handle it. And when things go wrong, you just look for something good to focus on. You stay on path, and you make sure that you do what you need to do to accomplish what gives you meaning in your life. And in the end, it all seems to work out. So there was that one. And then there was also a Beatles book called The Love You Make by Peter Brown. And he was an insider inside the Beatles. And his book gave me tremendous insight into the songs and albums that I was already in love with. And so he really kind of brought the Beatles story to life for me. So one of them was a big issue and one of them was a personal issue. But those are the 2 books.
What is your favorite Beatles song?
All time, got to be Blackbird.
It's a good one.
Yeah, everyone loves it, and it's a political song, and the lyrics speak to all of us about taking broken wings and learning to fly, and having hope in times of darkness. And it's really just a beautiful. Paul McCartney's a beautiful songwriter, and the Beatles are amazing musicians, and that's got to be one of my favorites.
Scott, you're back up for re-election this April. Tell the audience a little bit about how they can get a hold of you, how they can follow the campaign.
So the easiest way is that I have a group on Facebook called Scott McAdams for 5th Ward Alderman, and then we're discussing issues in the current campaign. But Scott R. McAdams is my personal page, and you're welcome to follow it. I post largely comedic memes, but there is some politics on there, not so much. And I often give links to news stories and to interesting things that I find that kind of help everybody to deal with the modern politics.
Alderman Scott McAdams, thanks for coming on the podcast.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Help George stay on the Chicago Heights City Council. Go and donate today at tinyurl.com/GeorgeBrassey. Alderman George 2023.
Begin to transform your life and work towards inner peace with expert psychotherapy. At True Heights Treatment, our experienced therapists provide personalized, compassionate care to help you overcome life's challenges and reach your goals. Whether you're struggling with depression, anxiety, relationship issues, or other mental health concerns, our team is here to support you. With a warm and welcoming in-person and virtual office atmosphere and a commitment to person-centered and evidence-based treatments, we are dedicated to helping you address your life's challenges. Contact us now to schedule your first session at 708-248-7039 or online at trueheightstx.com. Book your appointment today and start your journey towards a happier, healthier life.
Need more George? Like his pages on Facebook. Friends of George Brassey PAC, Fifth Ward Business Alliance, Chicago Heights Bicycle and Pedestrian Resource Center, and the George Brassey Podcast.